Welcome back to High Noon Sundays. My name is Siobhan Danger Darwish. I will be your host for this High Noon Sundays, and my guest, my very, very special guest for this Mother's Day Sunday is Lauren Rudick of Pillar PC. Hi, Lauren.
Hi, Siobhan. How are you?
I'm so excited that this is happening because I've just missed you.
I have missed you. It is so good to see your face, and I'm so honored to be a part of your High Noon Sunday. Thank you so much for having me. This is amazing.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time because this is probably the best topic that we've talked about yet. Lauren, you are an incredible human and you are such a grow sister to the cannabis movement. You are a founder of the Cannabis Practice with Pillar PC. You're on the board of the International Bar for Cannabis Association for Attorneys. Did I say that correctly? That was a great title.
International Cannabis Bar Association, where I serve as the organization's treasurer.
Wow, girl. I mean, I'll be honest, it didn't even occur to me that there would be something like that. But of course there is.
Yeah,
and of course you are on it.
I feel very lucky to be part of that group of lawyers. I definitely know the best cannabis lawyers in the world because of that organization.
So huge shout out to Omar Figueroa and his firm. We love Omar. Omar also on the Cannabis Bar Association. What a stellar human being. Yeah, very, very lucky to have Omar in our corner and to love him and get to watch him bloom into this incredible California attorney. I mean, over the last couple of years in our friendship, just watching the things that he's done, I'm just so impressed with this man. And, he does so much. And then suddenly he's like, oh, also I came out with another book. And I'm just thinking, awesome.
I don't know how he does it, but he is, and he's a litigator. He's a corporate lawyer. I mean, he's such a master of so many trades. It's very unusual. He's an excellent example and quite an inspiration for all of the rest of us. Probably one of the best cannabis lawyers in the world. Definitely one of the folks I was referring to as part of the International Cannabis Bar Association. But, you've got great representation if he's working with you.
Truly. Well, and it's funny because last time I saw Omar, we were at the Emerald Cup, and I just keep on having these Emerald Cup moments where I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't get to see you this year at Emerald Cup. This is our love anniversary, and we don't get to see each other. It feels so weird to me that nothing is going to be happening. So I guess we'll see. November is a long time away. So it's just really impressive all that you have done and who you are. So I'm so excited to have you on this High Noon Sundays. Thank you. This is going to be a very special one for my followers, which I just wanted to say, hi everybody, happy Mother's Day. Give a hug out to moms. I know we're all kind of still distancing and still taking that space and living through a really monumental thing here, and Lauren, you and I met when you were a mom, but baby now gets to be on the outside for Mother's Day. So happy first Mother's Day, sister.
Thank you. I'm excited.
Yeah. I bet.
Super pregnant last Mother's Day, so baby turns 1 in about 2 weeks. So yeah.
Whoa. And you're located in New York?
I am in New York City. Yeah, I'm reporting live from the hot zone.
Wow, how's it going?
It's very intense. I'm not going to lie, but New Yorkers really do band together in times like these. And I feel like people are looking out for one another. For the most part, people are socially distancing and wearing masks and looking out for their fellow New Yorkers. So I'm optimistic that we will get through this.
I believe so. Yes, absolutely. And, we're seeing a little bit of movement in the economy. And so that makes me really happy. It's been hard. It's been really hard for everyone. And I'm very fortunate that I live in an area that I am already social distancing technically. But, my heart goes out to everyone that has taken this time to, really actually social distance themselves and do what they're being asked to do. And it's been a lot for all of us. Regardless, it's still Mother's Day and we still get to celebrate all of the mothers the dog moms, the horse moms, the plant moms, the moms. I love it. So everyone call mom today and say, give her a hug if you a virtual hug if you can. My mom sent me a bunch of handmade or yeah, handmade mask and
That's very sweet.
yeah, I was like, thanks mom, I live on a farm. I don't ever go anywhere.
My husband actually got me an indoor smart garden, that takes up about 2 cubic square feet of space, and it grows cherry tomatoes and chives and basil and flowers. And I'm really excited to get it going.
I love him. Can we put the link to that product in the bio of this video so that other
Absolutely.
people?
Yeah. We got
Yeah,
it at the Mama store.
yeah, take pictures, please. Tag Grow Sisters. I want to see. I want to see everything.
Yeah.
That is a phenomenal idea. And what would you say? How big is it?
It's going to take up 2 feet, I think, on the countertop.
Okay.
So it's really small, and it
And
comes with LED lighting, and it tells you when to water it, and it's just one of those very smart, hydroponic systems that's just going to be super efficient. And originally I wanted a whole wall, but then I decided to start smaller. And my husband thought that was a nice thing to get going, because I've been pretty cooped up here, and I'm eager to grow my own food.
good for you. And the amount of food, even the sum that you named off there, like the amount of food that you'll be able to get out of that will be really impressive. And how nice is it to have fresh vegetables or fresh, herbs? One of my biggest irks in life, I think, is the amount of plastic that we use to transport things, and I understand a lot of it, but at the very same time, it's really hard for me to be throwing that stuff away when you could have just grown it in your garden, saved the gas getting to the car or to the store. But that's why I really love farmers markets as well, because a lot of the times you can just roll up with your basket and
Yeah. Yeah.
but
We're very lucky to have, delivery of fresh produce. I'm loyal to a company called Fresh Direct, which sort of, is
nice.
a very famous New York-based company that delivers groceries. And they
Yeah.
work with a lot of local farmers and co-op local farmers, and it's been a really great program. So they're more essential than ever during the pandemic. But access to fresh vegetables is relatively easy. But I want my own. I want to do it myself, And in an apartment, you're limited with options. But this smart garden idea is really starting to catch on.
It's so cool. So cool. Yes. Yes. I love this idea. This is fantastic. And being a rural Northern California country girl, I get really excited when I hear that you can order stuff to your door like food. And I visited a friend down in Oakland, and we ordered food from the grocery store, and it like came. It was like groceries, and I'm just going, "This is so cool."
It takes me about 5 minutes to order groceries. I just pull up the app on my phone and I load up my cart with all of my regular things, and the app will remind me what my regular things are, and I can shop by what's in season and what's sustainable, and I can know my fish ratings, and it's a really impressive program. And then it arrives at my door.
I love that, and I think we're going to start seeing a lot of that, and that doesn't mean that small farmers aren't going to be supported. That doesn't mean that.
Oh no, more than ever, I think. Yeah,
Yeah.
because this sort of model cuts out a lot of middlemen, and they can really distribute direct from the farmer, which is great.
Just the sooner we can get rid of the middleman, the better, right? Okay, so Hiller PC, tell me a little bit about your firm.
So we are a boutique law firm in New York City. We were mostly litigation driven, but our corporate practice is really starting to explode with the cannabis practice. We traditionally, before delving into cannabis, were known for land use and zoning and commercial litigation. And then we had a small but remarkable corporate practice. And then in 2009, I was actually living in California for my mother's end of life care. And we were medical patients, part of the medical cannabis program in California at the time. And I became very close with the owner of our collective, and I learned about all of the different legal issues that faced him in the operations of his business. And then when I came back to New York, I sat down with my, then boss, now partner, and I said, "There's work here, and there's lawyers needed in this industry, and this is going to be legal soon, and we should do it." But there was nothing to do yet in New York, so we just sat on it from an advocacy perspective, and we watched the industry develop. And then in 2014, when New York legalized medical cannabis, we jumped in and we started representing investors and some startup organizations.
Wow, I love it. I love it. And so from there, you then became the attorney on one of the most important cannabis cases. I mean, one of the first cases to really come out and get a ton of attention was obviously, the Attorney General Sessions case.
Hmm.
And like how did that come about, Lauren? How, I mean, as an attorney, as someone in your position, what was it like when the first, you hear about this and it gets put onto your plate? How did you respond to something like that? And for my guests who are listening that don't know about the Attorney General Sessions case, can you give us a little bit of background on that as
Sure.
well?
So the lawsuit involves a group of plaintiffs who I'll describe a little bit better in a bit, sued the federal government, sued former Attorney General Jeff Sessions and the DEA and the Department of Justice and the United States Congress, saying that the classification of cannabis as a Controlled One substance under the Controlled Substances Act is unconstitutional. And unconstitutional for a variety of reasons. Unconstitutional because it deprives people of life, liberty, without due process. Unconstitutional because it restricts our fundamental right to travel. It restricts our fundamental right to free speech. For example, one of our plaintiffs who needs medical cannabis to live and can't travel freely without fear of prosecution wanted to lobby in person with her congressional representatives on Capitol Hill. But she can't step foot into a federal building with her medical cannabis, notwithstanding that she needs it to live. So she's disenfranchised. And, the right to in-person advocacy is one of our most important fundamental one of our most basic fundamental principles of our democracy, and obviously a fundamental right in our Constitution. You've got the people who are most influential and who most need the laws to change who are unable to advocate in person, even though it's the most effective type of advocacy. And then we've got equal protection issues. It's no secret that the Controlled Substances Act has been, disproportionately enforced against people of color, notwithstanding that white people and Black people use cannabis in same measure. So we also attack, the equal protection. We use an equal protection argument there. And we have evidence that the Nixon administration, which ushered through the Controlled Substances Act, had policies rooted in a racial animus and a desire to suppress political rights. Nixon and his administrators had antipathy for people of color and people who were protesting the Vietnam War. And while they couldn't punish those people directly, they could certainly punish their drug of choice, which of course was cannabis. So, the Controlled Substances Act and the classification of cannabis as the most dangerous drug just makes absolutely no sense. I mean, in order for any drug to be properly classified as Schedule 1, it has to first have no medical purpose. We know that's not true. It can't be used safely, even under strict medical supervision. We know that's not true. And also, it has to have a high potential for abuse. And we know that's not true. And in fact, the whole gateway theory and all of that has been debunked. The DEA was actually required to remove from its website information that cannabis was a gateway drug because it was completely false. So we know cannabis doesn't meet any of the requirements to be a Schedule 1 drug. And, while Congress is allowed to enact bad laws, they're not allowed to enact unconstitutional ones. And this is unconstitutional because of the various deprivations that I was just talking about. I mean, who knew that a racist law in the 1970s would prevent children from being able to travel freely with their parents? It just doesn't make any sense at all.
Wow. I am so beyond thrilled that you just brought all of that up. Sister, that was exactly where I was going to lead you with that, because you were completely right about the war on drugs. Just say no. We really need to look into our history, and you just nailed it. You said exactly what that was. It was not about cannabis.
No, it had nothing to do with cannabis. It had to do with the people who used cannabis. And that
Yeah.
you see the collateral consequences of, generations of people, mostly minorities, being completely disenfranchised, being locked out of federal student loan programs and employment opportunities and loans. It doesn't make any sense at all for a plant that's completely safe and has a lot of medical application, and can really change the world in terms of medicine. It stands to be a true medical disruptor. In its variety of application, diversity of application, and we've just barely begun to scratch the surface.
By barely begun to scratch the surface. I mean, a monumental amount of healing is about to come from this plant, and we're not even close to being there with it. And so as a human that knows all of this, and you're very eloquent with the background of this work, and understanding it and history. I mean, obviously I can hear the passion in your voice, but like, were
It,
you afraid to take on the federal government? I mean,
there was a group of lawyers that wanted to challenge New York's bill, because I don't know if anyone knows anything about New York's medical cannabis regulation, but it's terrible. It doesn't provide access. It doesn't provide opportunity. There aren't a lot of patients that are covered by it, at least at first. And there isn't a due process mechanism by which to change the law. So there's this very restrictive law that doesn't get access to patients. And there's no real mechanism by which to challenge it or insist upon the inclusion of additional medical conditions. So a group of lawyers were brainstorming on how to challenge that law. And in so doing, we realized that our arguments were really constitutionally based, and that we should be challenging the classification of cannabis on a federal level, not a state level. So we came up with the legal theories, and then between us, my law partner really, who's sort of known for bringing these emergency applications and obtaining what's called injunctive relief. It's a restraining order of type that prevents governments from being able to enforce a law. It's a very difficult type of proceeding. And very few lawyers are very good at it, but he is excellent at it. And so we were thinking through how we could be most effective in our approach. And we were thinking about the types of plaintiffs that we would need who have been most damaged by this unconstitutional classification of cannabis. So we thought about it, and we thought that it's patients, it's children, it's people who are looking to engage in the business of cannabis, who can't participate in interstate commerce. Who has been harmed by the classification of cannabis, and how can we work with them as part of this case? So lawyers have a variety of the way cases develop. There's no real solicitation of clients. We sort of put it out there, that this is a case we wanted to bring. And if anyone knew anyone who was damaged by the types of claims that we wanted to make, then they should contact us, and we would be open to speaking with them about being a plaintiff in our case. So that's what we did. We put it out into the universe, and it came back to us, very quickly, with people who are lifelong advocates. Alexis Bortell, in particular, she's now, I guess, 14 years old. She is a young woman who suffered with intractable epilepsy. She was living in Texas, and doctors there wanted to remove part of her brain to resolve her seizures, and she was having multiple seizures a day, life-threatening seizures. So her family instead opted to move to Colorado and try medical cannabis, where she hasn't had a single seizure. Have a strong following and are advocates, and have changed hearts and minds, and have helped state legislatures enact responsible regulations with respect to medical cannabis, and with respect to medical cannabis use in schools. These are people who really champion causes. So Alexis Bortell, we've got another young child, Jagger Cotte, who suffers with Leigh disease, which honestly should have killed him before his 4th birthday. Most children who are diagnosed with Leigh disease live in terrible pain, and they're in hospice by the time they're 4. Just as Jagger was going on hospice at 4 years old, his parents tried cannabis. He's now over 7, and he's living much more comfortably. I can't say that he's pain-free, but he is certainly more comfortable. So we also represent, I think, in this case, the Cannabis Cultural Association, which is a nonprofit organization dedicated to diversity and inclusion in the cannabis industry. They are the ones who are championing the equal protection issue. We also represent Marvin Washington, a former NFL Super Bowl champion, who is known for his advocacy, especially as it relates to medical cannabis use for athletes. And originally, he sort of took the claim that there's all this federal grant money that would be available for people of color, but they can't access it because it would be with respect to a federal crime. And then we've got this overzealous federal enforcement of the CSA, notwithstanding that they've ceded enforcement of the Controlled Substances Act to the states. So they've basically told the states, you've got this, you can regulate medical cannabis, but we might arrest you. Maybe you'll get in trouble about it. So we say that that's not fair. And that's actually a violation of the separation of powers between the federal governments and the state governments. And that's a Commerce Clause argument. And Marvin Washington is helping us with that one. And then we also represent, in this case, a veteran, Jose Belen, who's a relatively well-known veteran who tries to get access for fellow veterans in the treatment of PTSD and other mental nervous disorders, anxiety, depression. He suffered with suicidal ideation, and he attributes cannabis to saving his life and the lives of many other veterans. He's got a nonprofit organization called Mission Zero, which is the hope to reduce the 22 veteran suicides a day to zero. So he would like access to medical cannabis through his VA program, but obviously there's a lot of restrictions there given that it's a federal program. So all of our plaintiffs are very different, but they all have very meaningful, impactful arguments and damage that they've suffered as a result of this unconstitutional classification of cannabis as a Schedule I drug, which makes absolutely no sense given its safety and medical application.
That was awesome. That was so much. And everything that you're touching here is so absolutely needed in the cannabis industry right now. I'm so impressed with you, Lauren, and I'm so grateful that we are friends and that I have the opportunity to just be like, "Hey, what are you doing?" So thank you so much. And the people who follow these cases and know what's going on and the background stuff that's so important in the cannabis industry, because we have a lot of fluff. There's a lot of stuff happening. There's just this constant amount of things to be distracted by. But the reality is that this is a medication and this is healing people as well as a recreational drug, which is amazing. But this is definitely something that is helping people. Just knowing that there are people out there like yourself and that are working to really keep stuff in line for cannabis is just such a relief to hear, because we all get so caught up in all of the other stuff that's happening and who's who and who's doing what, that we lose touch with the reality that we're still going through, each state has to determine its regulations. And
Yeah,
I didn't know that about New York. And
it's a
that,
terrible program.
yeah,
I tell my clients when they want to start a business, a cannabis business, I tell them, you're not just in the cannabis business, you're in the business of regulatory compliance and you're in the business of advocacy, because this is not legal yet. We are operating in open violation of federal law, and we are pushing state laws to expand. And the liberalization of cannabis requires advocacy and it requires changes in the law, and we can't succeed as an industry without those changes.
you just gave me the chills so big. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Because I was going to ask you what would you say to, one of my favorite questions is to ask, what would you say to a young entrepreneur getting into the cannabis industry? And I love that. I want to quote that. That not only are you becoming a business owner and you're going to have to go jump through all those crazy regulations, but you are also an advocate. And as the owner and operator of the first permit in the state of California,
Which is unbelievable. I can't even.
yeah,
That is
thank you. Fortunately,
non-inspirational.
yeah, thank you. I mean, it's been a wild ride. I would, we have furloughed our license for the last 2 years because we refuse to pay the crazy amount in taxes that the state of California requires for us to stay legal. And we just don't feel that, for my husband and I personally, it's more lucrative for us to work our other jobs, unfortunately. And the hope is that once everything starts to equalize, that we are seeing more craft cannabis actually being recognized. And that was the really exciting thing about our conversation just earlier about the food getting delivered and giving these small farmers more of an opportunity. And so thank you. Yeah, owner and operator of the first permitted farm in the state of California. However, we decide to furlough it because we just don't want to deal with the turbulence of what the regulations in the state of California are. And so my heart goes out to all of the attorneys that are helping.
But sitting here in New York, I wish we had those problems. I wish we were struggling with how to bring, thousands of operators into a licensed regime. I wish we had a market. When I visit California, Colorado, Oregon, it's like being on the moon. New York is just so behind. It's my understanding this year there are ballot initiatives in Arizona, South Dakota, and Montana, meaning that two Midwestern, extremely conservative states, in Arizona, which is sort of a swing, could potentially legalize cannabis before New York. And that makes zero sense given New York is liberal and democratic. So in New York is considered to be the largest consumption market. And it's my understanding that 80% of the cannabis in New York is still coming out of the California black market because the regulations there are so hostile to the businesses that they just can't afford to get rid of black market or gray market goods. And I don't think that the legal business is going to be able to effectively compete with the black market until we see a dramatic change in regulation.
I am so grateful that you were the one to bring that topic up this time, because usually it's me bringing that topic up, and that's a very serious topic this year. This year we are seeing more action in the black market than since legalization. We really, things dipped for the black market and now they've just skyrocketed. And I think that a large reason is because a lot of people see how hard it is to become legal, to keep a cannabis business going legal. And so
Yep. Look what's happening with COVID right now. So when you look at how COVID has forced some cannabis businesses to completely change their operations, retail only now is allowed to do delivery. They're allowed to do storefront pickup. When they first applied for their licenses, they probably had to submit very detailed operating procedures on how they were going to dispense cannabis to customers. But all of those procedures are basically out the window when you're bringing a bag outside to the curb. There's no more transactions on video. There's no more counting cash or whatever the requirements were. There's no more two transportation agents have to be available. All of that sort of has to go out the window in order to continue to provide medicine to the patients who need it. And I think the industry is realizing, all of those intense security requirements aren't needed because this plant is safe. We shouldn't be regulating the hell out of it because it doesn't correspond to its safety. You should only be regulating so seriously products that could hurt people, and this isn't one of them.
Yeah. For me, it is most absolutely about the plant. However, it's also about our economy. And it shocks me when I hear things like, oh, New York hasn't caught on yet. And the reason that shocks me is because you would think that as the state that they are, that they would want to tune into that financially.
We need it more than ever now. And we have a responsibility. This was the birthplace of the Rockefeller laws and the most disgusting of the incarceration regulations and sentencing. All of that came out of New York, which is embarrassing. We have a true responsibility here. We should fix it sooner than later. So essential but excluded is an issue that my law firm has been dealing with. So as everyone probably knows by now, the federal government enacted stimulus relief and is giving small businesses money, provided that they spend that money in a certain way. And it's in the form of loans, but some of those loans are forgivable, provided that you meet various eligibility and spending requirements. But the SBA, the Small Business Association, has locked out of participation cannabis businesses and indirect cannabis businesses. And indirect cannabis businesses really does encompass a very large swath of small businesses. So notwithstanding that this legislation was intended to protect small businesses, a lot of small businesses have been locked out of the program because they have this indirect relationship to a cannabis business. Now keep in mind that the vast majority of Americans live in some state where some form of cannabis is legal, whether it's adult use or medical use, but you've got the vast majority of Americans living where cannabis is legal. And you've got the vast majority of Americans, who are, or I guess you've got a very large percentage of small businesses that are thus locked out of this program. For lawyers, for example, if they've even looked at one cannabis lease, or if they looked at one cannabis transaction, then they wouldn't be able to apply for this stimulus relief. So we've got, on the one hand, state governments deeming cannabis operations, whether it's medical or adult use, essential businesses that stay open during COVID, but yet these same businesses can't access the federal stimulus relief and get the funding that they need in order to appropriately and effectively service their customers during this time. So it doesn't make any sense. And I actually think that this contradiction is good for the industry because it forces the issue. It forces people to think about why this happened and how this happened and why and how we can change it. And it needs to be changed. You know, there are people that rely on medical cannabis to live. There are governments that rely. Colorado had $1 billion in tax revenue since the legalization of cannabis. $1 billion. They need that tax revenue for their schools, for their streets, for their hospitals, for everything. You know, and so to not give cannabis businesses and indirect cannabis businesses access to the stimulus relief, you're choking state governments. You're cutting off their purse strings. You're preventing them from really being able to maximize their programs.
Okay, so what does this look like for the future moving forward for small businesses in cannabis?
So, you know, businesses that touch the plant for as long as it's federally illegal, I don't see that those businesses are going to have access to this sort of small business funding. But for some of the ancillary businesses, it just doesn't make sense to exclude them. So there's a lot of effort to try and push that forward. All of the cannabis industry organizations, the Bar Association, NCIA, NORML, they've all pulled together their resources and they are fighting this. And there is a bill that has been introduced in Congress with respect to the next tranche of federal funding that would specifically allow indirect cannabis businesses to participate. So we'll see what that looks like. You know, I'm optimistic, but I'm not holding my breath.
Wow, I am so fearful for the small farmers again.
Yeah, I know. And you know, and let's be clear that hemp businesses are not excluded. So hemp businesses are treated differently because they're federally legal under the 2014 or 2018 Farm Bill. So hemp businesses can apply, but then there are all kinds of exclusions for farmers. So, you know, that's another issue and another hurdle that they have to deal with.
Wow, well, gosh, Lauren, I am so grateful that you and Hiller PC are on the side of, fighting for the cannabis industry for this because this is huge. And really, you kind of mentioned it a little bit, but ultimately, seeing the direction that this goes in could really determine a path for us. And I think that this is so incredibly important.
Yeah, we try to take clients that advance these goals. You know, we try to represent people that are making moves in the industry, and we can help push the industry open. You know, get it the attention it deserves, the right kind of attention. You know, and support people who are really looking to change hearts and minds.
So I guess my biggest question as you're saying this is what are some of the things that businesses like farmers or small businesses, cannabis businesses can do if it works out that they don't get this funding or just for say this COVID-19 continues and lapses over the months that they expect it to do. Um, this is going to become increasingly hard for small cannabis businesses.
Yeah, and it wasn't ever easy for them, but you know, the most important thing that I can say is to get organized. You know, get your ducks in a row. It's time to really understand how much money you have, what your debts are, what your liabilities are, what your exposure is, because you don't know, you can't tell how much you need unless you know exactly how much you have. You know, so it's important to instill appropriate accounting policies, bookkeeping policies. Make sure you have your finger on the pulse of your financials. And then you can do a real assessment and figure out where there's opportunities to make cuts, where you have to make cuts. You know, for example, you might be able to, find that you have a series of debts. Maybe you can renegotiate those interest rates. Maybe you can settle one of those debts. Some, lenders might take an upfront payment in exchange for not waiting over time, and they'll take a little bit less just to have that stability. So once you know how much money you owe and how much you have, you can start to, reconfigure some of it, and in a way that makes your monthly pressure easier. Take some of that pressure off if you're facing, some bills, because as you know, cannabis businesses also don't have access to federal bankruptcy protection. There may be some state opportunities, but that it's federally illegal. It's not as if a cannabis business can just close up shop, walk away, and ignore its liabilities. I mean, they are going to be stuck, and it could very well become a personal liability on the farmer themselves, as opposed to, a corporate liability. So it's very important that, people pay their taxes, that they have strong handle on their liabilities, and that they're able to confidently adjust them, in a way that makes sense for their business to keep going. And then I encourage people to just dip into their sales channels and see what's been working, and do it again. If you've got loyal customers, it's my understanding that you can increase your sales by writing handwritten notes to them. And that is known to increase sales by like 10 to 20%. So there's a lot that you can do to be creative with your own customers, outreach, communication. Everybody wants to hear from someone right now. People are very isolated. People are very sad. It's important to have that connection. It's important to maintain communication, to have that open door. And I think it will be rewarded in sales and customer loyalty. Relationships are important. Consider pairing up with your neighbor for bulk orders. Maybe you can get a discount. There's definitely ways to shave some costs there. Definitely co-op models, sharing expenses, sharing employees and team members and contractors. All of that can defray some costs and make life a little bit easier. Consider across the board salary reductions before firing even a single person. There's lots of different ways to sort of do this in a way that's soft without obviously there are some companies that have no choice but to make cuts, intense, cuts right away. But, if there's a way that you can buy time, then you can be very strategic about it.
Wow. It is just a sign of the times, isn't it? I just continue to go, my brain just keeps going back, as a small farmer, I just keep on reflecting back to how incredibly difficult this has been alone pre to surviving this epidemic. So my heart goes out to all those small farms or to everyone dealing with this current life situation. And I just really love that all of that structure, business and infrastructure is fantastic to look at, but then you drifted to the core of it, and which I really think is that consumer or customer relationship and that friendship, because I just feel so fortunate with the people that contact me and love me and support what I'm doing, because I legit am just a silly girl from the black market, and I didn't know what I was doing when I got into all this. And so one of my favorite things has been getting to know other people and celebrating that. And so I love that. I do write the hand, I'm so excited to grow with you, here's your shirt. But it's those silly little things. Where would someone look to find out what's happening with these subsidies?
It's every cannabis business should have a great relationship with their lawyer, right? Navigating legal implications of a cannabis business is not easy. It's not even easy for the lawyers who do it every single day. So if you are a cannabis business or an ancillary business, call your lawyer and talk to them about, what's available to you and what some of your options might be. And they can explain to you whether you qualify or don't qualify or what to look forward to. And they may be able to provide you with some local resources. Maybe there's no federal resource, maybe there's a state resource. But as of right now, depending on what representations your bank might have you make regarding your use of the funds, for the most part, cannabis businesses seem to be locked out of access, and hopefully that won't last long.
Okay, well, keep yourselves educated, connect with your attorneys. Let's stay up on this topic. This is a very interesting and serious topic for our industry. Thank you, Lauren. That was awesome. I'm so happy that you and I got to connect and catch up. I really liked watching the Hiller PC live webinar the other day that you all did on Facebook. Will you be doing more of those?
We will. We're definitely going to be taking, some of the issues that were discussed in that and, blowing them out into, their own special, so to speak. We're definitely going to talk about social justice reform. We're definitely going to talk about the flow of capital. We need to talk about how these multi-state operators are just crumbling and falling apart. And notwithstanding that, there is renewed investor optimism. The whole designation of cannabis being essential is good for investment. And so I really feel like once the economy starts to open up, there will be investment dollars. I think that businesses have to be a little bit more realistic about their valuation, but I do think that capital markets are going to open up. And I'm already seeing some very promising movement of capital with biotech and medical innovation and research and those sectors. we work very closely with Dr. Ethan Russo, who is sort of the father of terpenes and minor cannabinoids, and he is just launched a new company called Credo Science, an IP holding company, which is going to be licensing his innovations. And a lot of people know him from having worked 16 years at GW Pharmaceuticals and being involved in Epidiolex and Sativex, which are some of the first cannabis plant-based drugs that exist. But he is much bigger than GW Pharmaceuticals. He is sitting on innovation that he hasn't had the opportunity to exploit for decades, and we're going to bring all of those products to market. So definitely seeing, some investor interest there. I work very closely with True Terpenes, who is a global leader manufacturer of terpenes. They're the only GMP certified terpene manufacturer, which is amazing, setting standards for the industry. And coming out of the vape crisis, I think that we need credentialed companies. We need to have businesses put products in the market that are safe and manufactured pursuant to very high standards. So I'm super excited to see that level of sophistication if it's just happening with my clients. I can only imagine what's happening in the greater market. But I'm really looking forward to seeing some of these companies that are just doing it the right way, get the exposure that they deserve.
Absolutely. I can't celebrate that enough. Most definitely. And Russo, oh my gosh, I know, right? And the terpenes, what did you call them? I'm sorry. I know I've been following them.
True Terpenes, and Russo will be doing some work with them as well. He'll be serving as an advisor and working on, developing effects blends, using his medical background. But I think terpene science, everyone talks about THC and CBD is, the cannabinoid of the moment, but terpenes play a very major role with respect to how cannabis makes you feel. A lot of the sleepiness or the alertness or the ability to concentrate, some of that isn't necessarily cannabinoid based. It comes from terpenes, and it comes from the entourage effect between the cannabinoids and the terpenes. And there is nobody in the world who knows that science more fluently than Dr. Ethan Russo.
Awesome. We love Dr. Russo. All of that information is going to be in the link inside this video's bio. So please go follow Lauren and follow Hiller PC. Those webinars blew my mind. I really am grateful to be getting into more and more of not just the science or the medicinal side, but even the law and the regulation. This is so important as an activist, as a business owner, as a female, as a human. And so on that note, happy High Noon Sundays, Lauren, and happy Mother's Day, babe.
Thank you. Thank you. Should I get Gabe? Should I bring him in here?
Yeah, Ree, what are you doing? Hi. Oh my gosh. Look at all that hair. Hi, Miss Ree. Hi, you are the happiest ever. Oh my goodness.
That's a good one.
Wow, Lauren.
Hi, Crow Sisters.
What a handsome boy.
Look at the puppy. Look, what does a dog say?
This is Weed Panda. He's blind. Hi. Oh my gosh, look at your 2 teeth and everything.
Well, thank you for having us, and I wish everybody a very happy Mother's Day. It's very hard. Some people don't have their moms or don't get to see their moms, but the whole relationship really lives within all of us, and I'm so happy to be spending this time with my husband and baby. I never really took much maternity leave, so this time is super special, and notwithstanding the fact that it's incredibly challenging, we're all very grateful. I just want everyone to be safe and healthy.
Same. Thank you so much, Lauren. That was great to see you. And your information always is just impressive. And the strides that you're making for this industry is just, you're like a superhero. Bye. Bye, Reed. You're so cute. Oh, he is. Oh, so cute. It's like ridiculous. Oh my gosh.
So much for having me.
I appreciate it.
Bye. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on this Happy Mother's Day High Noon Sunday. Please leave a comment and let us know what you thought, or if you have any additional questions. Also, please hit that subscribe button and be sure to follow Hiller PC on Instagram and Facebook. Hit the subscribe button so the sisters can grow. We love you all. We'll see you next time. Bye.